Okay, we have a great group of panelists to talk about the AI innovation and investment trends. So let's please welcome Selina Wang from Bloomberg to introduce the panelists and to get started. Thank you, and we're having a reception right after this, so please pay attention. Thank you.
Hi, everybody.
Does everybody get a mic?
Thanks, everybody, for being here. I'm actually going to have every panelist introduce themselves for 30 seconds to a minute. My name's Selina Wang. I'm a reporter at Bloomberg News for the print and television side, and I focus on global technology. So start.
Thank you so much for having me, and it's actually a pleasure, very much a pleasure to be here. My name is Zhou, and I'm one of the partners at Amino Capital, and we've been around for a little bit over 5 years, and our investment theme is always been data. So data plus analytical skills plus domain expertise, which is the future of AI, and data plus sharing plus token economics and blockchain, which is the promise of Web 3.0. So that has been our focuses.
Hi everyone, my name is Nan, and I've been with Baidu for 2 years, responsible for Baidu's overseas investment in Silicon Valley. And now we are launching a new fund called Baidu Changcheng Investments. It's an independent fund anchored by Baidu and led by Baidu's former CFO, Jennifer Li. And the new fund will be focusing on AI technology, AI core tech, enabling technologies, also deep tech, in both Silicon Valley and China.
Hey guys, my name's Nick Adams. I work at a small venture firm called AAMA Cloud Ventures, which is Jerry Yang's venture firm. I guess everyone invests in data here, so there's nothing differentiated about what we do. But I'd like to say we were probably investing in data-driven companies before it was cool, before it was called AI. So starting back in 2012, and I've been with the firm now for 6 years.
Good afternoon, or good evening. My name's Kunle Olukotun, and I'm the chief technologist at a company called SambaNova Systems. And this company is fairly recent. It's been around for about 10 months, and it's designing AI processors. The other thing I do is I'm a professor at Stanford. I've been there for 27 years, so I remember when Jerry Yang was a graduate student. And I've done a lot of work in computer architecture. All of the multi-core ideas were done in my lab in the 90s.
Great, thanks everyone. So Nan, I wanted to start with you. You are at Baidu's investment arm, and Baidu is one of the leading artificial intelligence players in China, but you're primarily focused on investments here in the US. So how would you contrast the development and investment opportunities here and in China when it comes to AI?
Okay, so just as Dr. Kai-Fu Lee mentioned in the previous fireside chat that he said that US is a lot more advanced in the research, AI research and AI core talents. So we do notice that in the US, the semiconductor, the deep tech in the hardware is a lot more advanced than in China. So that's why Baidu's over the past 2 years, we look a lot on the, for example, sensor technology for self-driving car, AI chips in terms of semiconductor to improve the computational power. So that's kind of our sort of investment focus in Silicon Valley, because we see that there's a superior and a lot more technology advantage in this field compared to China. And in comparison in China, you'll see that in the past 2 years, China is catching up a lot in terms of AI. And the unicorn that we know, like for example, iFlyTech, SenseTime, Face++, all the using facial recognition or speech recognition technology. And they have a strong focus on surveillance. And it's because they have a lot of data generated through the camera and also supported by the Chinese government. That's where I think I noticed that where the value is being captured the most, and that's where the AI unicorn in China is being focusing on.
Nick, I want to see if you agree or disagree with that. I think we can all agree China is definitely ahead when it comes to the volume of data it collects, but when it comes to basic research and hardware, who do you think is ahead?
Yeah, I've been thinking about this. Can I use your microphone, please? Okay, sorry. Well, maybe you should use mine. So I've been thinking about this a lot since you invited us on the panel. Thank you. I think it depends whether you think that we're kind of midway or towards the end of the AI revolution or just beginning? Because, I think right now there's this paradigm where we're in this sort of big data-driven AI, and I think in that respect, China probably has more data, especially when it comes to things like facial recognition, where the government's letting companies have free reign over sort of using everyone's face in the country to train models. So, those models might be, models here that do the same thing might be at 99.5. In China, they might be 99.8 or 9% accuracy. But I think the interesting thing that's going to sort of happen over the next few decades, and I do actually think we're at the beginning of this, so personally I think we're at the very beginning of this revolution, is that sort of the more exciting aspects of AI are going to be AI that's a little bit closer to the way sort of we think. So it doesn't need to be like a human, equivalent mind will be created in the next 20 years. But think about the fact that babies really don't need a lot of data to learn very basic things. And some quite complex things. And I think over sort of the next few decades, the interesting areas are going to be areas where there's a lot less data to build these models from. And we can do some really cool things with that. And so the question is China going to be ahead there? And so I guess it goes back to your point about research. This is all very early now. And we've got some companies in our portfolio that are working on using very small data sets to try and train models. We're talking about 100 or 1,000 samples versus 1 million samples. And I think that the jury's out on that, but I do like the fact that talent from all over the world can come to Silicon Valley, whereas I don't see talent from all over the world going to China. So I think that for now there's an advantage, but let's see how this thing plays out.
Right, well, speaking of an advantage, Sue, I want to pick your brain on the government aspect of this. The Chinese government says they want to be the leader in AI by 2030. If you compare that to the US, where there really isn't much of a strategy, do you think that's going to help innovation over there, or will it result in inefficiencies from too much government involvement?
Exactly. So I think that's a very good question. And in terms of valuation, it's already ahead of us. In US, there is no model unicorn. For example, do we love AlphaGo? We love AlphaGo, but 500 million, it was acquired by Google. However, do we know there was a company called Face++? It actually started to get at the same time, at similar time as the company we invested. It's called Albius, which we invested in 2013. It's a facial recognition API company. Same thing. It was acquired before AI was a hype. So in year of 2016, early 2016, when Tesla hasn't actually became the world's third largest automaker, in the US. So it was acquired by Amazon. It was a very successful acquisition. Right now, Amazon AWS still rebranded Recognition API to be a free app on top of AWS. Very successful acquisition. So in around 2016 to 2017, a lot of the US tech giants and the existing industry actually already finished the AI first type of revolution, especially Google actually said that out in their Google I/O. Every company should be AI first. So, but in China, there's no. It's not like that. Company like Face++, it was valued at over 2 billion valuation right now. It's more than a unicorn. Why is that? Money laundering? I don't know. But I think there's a reason. Because in China, as somebody said to me, in China, there is no SAP. There was no SAP. There was no enterprise actually being funded in China. So Face++, they actually got deeply integrated into fintech domain. So using AI, they actually tackle into fintech, they are doing the banking IT system. So why they are doing that? Because there was this one time, there was Alipay, right? So they need KYC. So there was this one time that Chinese government changed their regulation, and they were saying that all the online banking, you have to do KYC. And then Alipay didn't have that solution. They can do it, but the regulation was there. They have to rush. So they have to open up their data to this small model company. And suddenly, Face++ has a lot of data. And then they can actually talk to the bank and saying that very cheap, you can get our KYC services. It's just a couple cents per API call. And then all the banks, almost all the banks in China is using this API. And then they actually, when Yinqi, the founder, came to Stanford, he said that AI company, you have to do dirty work. What is dirty work? You're not just a scientist. You have to actually work on the IT infrastructure. So that's how all those companies in China from model company became a IT solution. So there is no such thing like AI industry, no such thing. Tesla using facial recognition and image recognition to become the best, like EV company. So I think existing industry plus AI is actually the future of AI.
Great, thank you. So we'll come back to that. Kunle, I want to come to you and SambaNova. So you're trying to figure out how to make the underlying infrastructure to make AI more efficient, right? Can you talk a little bit about the problem you're trying to solve?
Well, I think, we've all heard a lot about AI, and I think that the implications of it are very deep, right? I think if you look at what machine learning and AI is capable of, then of course all the transformations that it's made in the sorts of problems that people typically think of as things that humans can do well, facial recognition, speech understanding, and the like. And if you look over time, as has been noted by Kai-Fu Lee and others, that the fundamental machine learning ideas are very old. They go back 40, 50 years. And if you look at neural networks and how they're trained using an idea called backpropagation, that stems from the 80s. And Kai-Fu Lee mentioned two key elements that were required for the sort of state that we are in with ML today. One was data, and the other was more complex and more interesting models. But the other big thing that he didn't mention, which has kind of been key, has been the computation, right? So in order for us to actually train these models and do the trillions, hundreds of trillions of operations required to train these models and train them in a reasonable amount of time, it's required a huge amount of computation. And traditionally that is being provided by GPUs. However, as we move forward into what people have been calling software 2.0, this notion that instead of having humans develop algorithms to solve problems, we are going to train models based on training data, then what you want is a substrate not designed for graphics as GPUs have been, but you want something that is designed fundamentally for doing machine learning and data analytics. And so providing a platform to allow machine learning and AI innovators to be creative is what we are developing at SambaNova.
So how does that actually work in practice, and who ideally, when it ships, would be your target customers?
Well, the customers could range from anybody who wants a very efficient system for doing machine learning, right? So if you want something that allows you to train much larger models, you want something that allows you to train much more quickly, you want something that actually allows you to do inference with very low latency, all of these sorts of targets or all of these sorts of problems are potential customers for the SambaNova technology.
Nan, China right now is under heightened scrutiny for intellectual property theft, and there's a tightening of scrutiny of Chinese investments in the US. Has that impacted the ability of Baidu to make the investments they want to here in the US?
Are you talking about CFIUS?
I am talking about CFIUS and the new FIRMA legislation that just passed.
Yeah, well, I think the recent legislation absolutely presented a huge challenge for Chinese companies to further invest in Silicon Valley. Well, but I think that for us, we always make a very clear value proposition that we are here to help. And we are the money, the investment angle with strong integrity, that we really want to using the technology here to boost the AI, in general, the technology to to accelerate the development in both US and China. Like for example, last year we looked at an AI super chip company in Silicon Valley, and something similar to SambaNova, but it was developed a year ahead. And they develop a chip to accelerate the machine learning, and it says that it's 100 times faster than the NVIDIA's GPU, because there is really huge demand to have this kind of AI chips to accelerate the machine learning and to faster the training data and to improve the algorithm. And this company really need not just the tech giant in the US to test their system, but they also need companies like Baidu and Alibaba and Tencent in China to use their product and to give them feedback. So that's why companies like this, they want the investor from China to invest and also have a strategic partnership. And I think that with such value proposition, that the startups here still want the money from China to also enter the China market and to accelerate the general AI development together.
Nick, I want to see if you have any take on that as well. Has that affected your fund?
Yeah, I mean, we are lucky that we really focus on Silicon Valley, so we haven't invested in China much. We are investors in SenseTime and a few other companies, but it's quite sort of unusual for us to invest in China. We are seeing problems the other way. So we were investors in Treasure Data, and they were bought by ARM for about, I think, 600 million. About 4 or 5 months ago, it was only announced about a month ago, and one of the reasons was it was under heavy review from CFIUS. This is because ARM, even though it's a UK company, is owned by SoftBank. So I think we should not sort of, one of the things that's very interesting about CFIUS is it kind of feels a little bit like the kind of government body that exists in China. So it's true, gray area, not quite sure what's written down. And by the way, anything can be reviewed and anything can be strategic. And it can be blocked for political reasons. It can be blocked because Trump just doesn't like the guy or whatever. No, we should laugh, but we should also be very cognizant that this is a time that's kind of strange. So, I think so far we haven't seen any sort of major negative impacts. But as companies of ours look at foreign investors, not just Chinese, but any foreign investors or foreign acquisitions, we have to be really cognizant that this could be a long process. We have to make sure they have enough capital to go through diligence and through potential CFIUS review. We probably have to be conservative about sort of being forward with CFIUS review so that we don't sort of get hit later. And it's kind of a weird time, and it does remind me a little bit of kind of the gray area that you deal with in China. Those of you who've done business in China know that it's not everything's written down. You just need to make sure that you know the right people. So I think it's interesting. Right,
fundraising can already be difficult and just adds an extra layer. So Sue, you've been involved in more than, I believe, 200 startup investments. So when you're looking at startups in the AI space, how do you sift through all the noise and find the startups that are truly going to be breakthroughs versus just using AI as a buzzword?
That's such an important question that you ask. I think when we got started in 2012, and if you are a Stanford graduate student and you came to us and asking that, oh, Sue, I wanted to get your money as because we were first money, right? So they were like, what should I do now, and where should I get my first job? And we always tell them, go to Google and get a PM job, product manager. And then the customer, how to work as, how to make a product work. However, nowadays, it's not going to be like that. AI is given. It's like year of 2000. If you say, I'm an internet company, I have a website, everybody has a website. Why? As I mentioned earlier, between year of 2016 to 20, even now, a lot of the companies, especially tech giants, they already AI first. Even though those ones, they are not. And then I think Google AutoML and Google Cloud will help them because Google Cloud now has a consulting company. So they will, if you are a restaurant, you wanted to, make, automatic server, and then you can hire Google, and they will make it for you. So because a lot of people, if you just, I think year of 2016 when AI was truly a hype because Tesla's, significant growth, and then a lot of people actually pay really high price to actually acquire AI company, such as like Cruise. Cruise was acquired by GM for $1 billion, and then Zoox. Their first round is like $1 billion. So it's just, they don't have a product yet. So, but now they even raised more. So I think it's almost impossible for us to invest because it's like a little bit like it's definitely hype. But suddenly, year of 2017, there was this ICO. So it's very interesting. Everybody is actually investing in ICO. And then what happened is that in April 2017, there was a company called Amino. It was more like Alipay in Southeast Asia. And then I think Vitalik is really working with this company. And then nobody actually wanted to invest in ICO because back then, nobody even know whether it will work. And then we were very excited because we actually invested in blockchain from year of 2014. So we joined the private sale. And then suddenly, it became the first ICO unicorn. And then we decided to invest in AI because there was no hype anymore, and all the companies finished their AI first revolution. So the best company for early stage investor you want to invest is somebody who actually have a product people really want. They have to create a company to serve those customers. Those are the best company that you want to invest. And they don't care whether there's a hype because they have these customers they really want to be served. So those are the companies we want to invest. And if there was no hype, people still wanted to do AI, we definitely want to invest in those companies.
So speaking of large rounds, SambaNova, you are less than a year old, but have raised a decent amount of capital. And as the only non-investor here, I'm sure a lot of investors in the audience and on the panel would be interested in your company. So how do you decide which investors you want to work with when there's so much interest?
Well, we look for investors who can really bring, real benefits to the table. So. And so, the set of investors, we had a $56 million A round led by Walden Ventures, of course, deep expertise and a lot of capabilities and experience with semiconductors, right? And so Lip-Bu, of course, has funded semiconductor companies for a long time through thick and thin, and now we're back to thick again, right? So, and then of course the other, it was co-led by Google Ventures, and of course GV has a lot of experience in AI, and so, given that we are a software hardware company, you mentioned there are lots of companies who just brand, themselves as AI companies because that's the hot thing, right? It used to be blockchain, now it's AI. Some companies go from blockchain to AI, but and then they're probably going to look for the next hot buzzword. But we fundamentally have a set of expertise that goes everywhere from applications, AI algorithms, programming languages, compilers, and VLSI technology, and I think this is the kind of broad range of capability that you need to succeed, and of course this is backed by investors who kind of know these spaces and can really provide the sort of advice that we need to be successful.
And there's a lot of startups trying to accomplish something in the realm of what you are that have also recently raised some pretty large rounds. So how would you explain in pretty simple terms how your technology is different?
Well, I think what we bring is a true systems approach, right? I mentioned all the different aspects of capability that we have inside the company, and so it's not just that we have these capabilities, but we also have a way of doing co-design between the layers, such that you can come up with new algorithms. And the co-founders are myself, Chris Ray, who's another Stanford professor, and also certified genius by and then Rodrigo Liang, who was a VP at Oracle for many years and has led many generations of microprocessor design. So you have a combination of somebody who really understands algorithms, a person like me who really understands systems, compilers, and architecture, and someone like Rodrigo, who has delivered lots and lots of microprocessor designs at the most cutting edge process technologies, and you bring that all together, and you have a combination of people who kind of know how to innovate, but also know how to deliver to the enterprise and have sold to the enterprise and have provided the sorts of capabilities that make other companies successful.
So I just got the signal from Rebecca. I'm just going to have time for one more question, and I'm going to throw it to Nick. Because you said you were an investor in SenseTime, we've been talking a lot about the positivities of AI, but there's also fears that in China it's fueling the sort of police surveillance state, that there's not proper data privacy control. So, I mean, what are your concerns in that space, and how do you sort of identify those challenges in startups?
This is a very deep philosophical question, which I've had big debate. I just came back from a week in Berlin, and my German friends we disagree, and they really hate what's going on, and they're very scared about Big Brother. I think it's and rightly so perhaps, but I don't know. I think you cannot ask a foreigner who lives in Silicon Valley this question. You have to go and ask the ordinary Chinese people. And when I go there, and I've been lucky to be in China 3 times this year, it's not something people are talking about, And I think when you come here, people are talking about Trump. They're talking about a lot of things that upset them. You'd expect if people are upset about it, they'd probably be talking about it. And you can have, I find it very easy to have free conversations with friends in China about politics, about all kinds of things. But they're working hard. They're busy with their startups. They're busy investing. They're building the economy. Now, maybe they'll wake up in 10 years and wish they cared more about it then. And I don't know if there's anything they can do about it. But honestly, if I'm a criminal and I walk into a stadium and in a music concert and I'm caught because of facial recognition, because there's a security camera, is that any different to a security guard sitting with my photograph next and going, ooh, that's the same guy? And then, sure, it can be done at scale, but am I worried about that? Not really. And I think I generally, maybe this is going to be very controversial, but I generally trust the Chinese government. There's a lot of insecurity there, but I generally trust them to sort of do the right thing at sort of a high level. So I don't know if that's really controversial, but I'm the wrong person to ask. You shouldn't ask a white guy this question, because you'll get, and most of us will probably get very upset. I know there was a letter from a Google engineer a few days ago about this, and 1,400 people signed a petition to have Google not go to China because they're scared about fears. I bet if you took those 1,400 people and that one Google engineer who wrote that memo and put them all in China for 3 years, as I lived in China for 3 years, I bet they'd all flip their opinions. At least a good majority of them would flip their opinions.
Well, I think it's good for everybody to express their opinions, even if they're controversial. So, Rebecca, can we have just like one more minute?
Yeah, one more
Okay.
minute, yeah.
So I was in China for the past 3 months, and I noticed something very interesting. Number one is that even a taxi driver in Beijing or in Shanghai can talk about AI.
Wow.
Yeah. Well, we thought that we, as an investor in Silicon Valley, I think here the tech guys, I thought that only the tech guys here knows about AI, but now in China, everybody knows about it. They can talk about it all the time. I'm really surprised. And the number two is that if you walk in Shanghai or Beijing, you'll see the security cameras everywhere, on the bridge, on the way, everywhere. So they are capturing the data everywhere. So I'm a little bit concerned actually about the data integrity on how the startups or the government gather data in China, and how the engineers train the data. When the data in, have they cleaned the data and washed it out in a legal way and try to protect the people's privacy? Sometimes, because the startups in China are so fast, so when they gather the data, they just want to train it immediately and use it immediately, and to get the monetization immediately. And I do hope that there is certain legal structure or legislation in the future that can secure and can legalize the data and to regulate the startups and entrepreneurs the way they use the data.
Well, thank you all so much. It was a pleasure, and hope we can continue these discussions over drinks.
Absolutely. Thank you, everyone, for coming this evening. And we will have a reception now.
And you can go outside and enjoy the beautiful view of the bay, or go out here in the lobby area as well.